So tonight we're speaking to one of the stalwarts of the diabetes community, Pete Davies. Pete was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as a 2-year-old and will shortly celebrate his 68th anniversary. He worked as a teacher and has seen many changes in how type 1 is managed over the years. Pete is an amazing advocate and has spoken at many events, spreading his message of hope and positivity. He has also undertaken many challenges to raise money for diabetes charities, including climbing Kilimanjaro and his most recent trek to climb Toubkal in North Africa to celebrate his 70th birthday. So, hello, Pete, and welcome.
Well, hello, everyone. It's a great honour to be here. I'm delighted to be here speaking.
The honour is all ours. It is all ours. So, as you've been a guest previously, we're not going to do the 90-second questions again.
Oh, good.
We did those before.
Yeah.
No, don't sound like that. I might send some out now.
No, I'm only teasing.
No, I know. So I was just wondering if to start off with, you could just talk a bit about sort of when you were diagnosed and, sort of things like that, because it was sort of like things were very different in, I imagine, 68 years ago. Sorry, I'm not doing that to emphasize your age or anything. So,
well,
so can you tell us a little bit about how you were diagnosed and whatever? Because 2 is really young.
Well, yes. Well, as a result of being so young, I don't remember anything about it, actually. It's as though I've had diabetes all my life, which I almost have. But my mum, bless her, always kept a 5-year diary. My sister Sue, she's the only one that can read mum's writing. She went scouting through there and found an account on the actual date, 28th of November, so coming up very soon. And not an emotional account of what things went on, but very factual, but also with a few emotional bits in there. But it makes interesting reading. You know, the fact that she and her mother, we were living in East Africa at the time, and my eldest sister is profoundly deaf. She's stone deaf in one ear, has no hearing at all, has about 5% hearing in the other ear, and she was about 4, and we came home to get Janet sorted out with a hearing aid and things. It all happened very slowly and very late. And just to help things out, I went and got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And my poor dad out in East Africa, he was a bit horrified when he heard what was going on. So it was a bit of a shock all round. But it's quite amazing. Mum had only her mother with her, and it reads every day in the diary while I was in there. We stayed from 6:30 to 7 in the evening, and that was it. That was the only time parents were allowed to visit, which just seems quite extraordinary now in this day and age, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I was in for 16 days.
Oh my goodness.
Sent out with on 1 injection a day for the following 5 years until I was 7, and just on a cloudy insulin, which managed to last all day with the zinc in it, and had great big long either 28 or 32 millimeter long needles, which were very suitable for use on horses as well. Apparently, they really were vicious looking things. I expect some of you have seen them.
I was going to say, look like harpoons.
Yeah, oh, they were. Yeah, but oh dear, poor mum having to use those on a little tiny baby. It seems horrific, really, doesn't it? But there we go. And I think it was very brave of them. They said we want to go back to Africa and finish off life out there, because everything was very settled out there for us. And so they took me back. But R.D. Lawrence, who I was put under, he's one of my greatest heroes. He got in touch with a guy called, I've forgotten his name now. Wood begins with W. I've forgotten his name, but he was recommended by R.D. Lawrence as the best specialist in Nairobi. So dear old dad, he managed to get his job moved from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania back to Nairobi. So I think that was the result of me getting diabetes that did that. But so he was we were close to decent care there.
Yeah.
So that's about all I can say about my diagnosis. I don't know anymore.
You don't know how they noticed it or anything like that.
Right,
you just know you were diagnosed.
Well, I was kind of unwell. I had ulcers and all sorts of things for several months before. And mum just noticed me drinking like a fish and weeing
Yeah.
19 to the dozen, the usual symptoms. And she was a nurse herself, so she was immediately worried about that. And naturally, she'd seen the worst side of it, people coming in regularly with hypos and DKAs and all the rest of it. And I think she saw the worst side of it. And that was the thing that R.D. Lawrence said to her, don't think like that. Pete's got a great life ahead of him. He can still do, fantastic things and do whatever he wants, more or less, apart from fly aeroplanes. And these are not the case now. But, he was very positive, and my parents were as well. So, I think I was very lucky. But they did certainly notice that, and I was whisked into the GP. He did a urine test, then a blood test, which you had to send off. You couldn't have it done just there and then. And as soon as he saw the urine test, he said, "Right, into hospital quick." So it was all quite dramatic, quite quick. But I don't remember a thing about it.
No. Yeah. So you're quite lucky if your mum was a nurse that she was on it quite fast, I would have imagined.
Certainly helped, yes.
Yeah. And how did your parents cope? Because with a little one, it must have been so difficult, or I would imagine, sort of just keeping track of it. And or do you think it was easier then with the one injection a day than now with children being on multiple injections?
I had loads and loads of hypos. I mean, that's not a criticism of the way they managed it. If you imagine what we've got now, and you get rid of CGMs, you get rid of insulin pumps, you get rid of insulin pens, you get rid of blood test meters. You were just left with urine tests and these long syringes and these not a great variety of insulins, and that was it. So it was hard. I think I had several hypos. I can remember as a kid waking up in a soaking wet bed and shaking and quivering and so cold. I think most people have experienced that at some stage, but that happened quite a lot. And I think they just had the door open, they listened, and I'm sure they set alarms and got up. I wish I'd talked to them more before I got involved in the diabetes world, before Kilimanjaro. I'd love to ask them lots more questions, but I think that's what they must have done. Just use their ears and use their senses. That's all that was available. So it's very different world.
Yeah, but it always sounds, because I know you, Pete, anyway, and I've seen you talk to them, that they had quite a positive attitude to it, though, like you're saying, because of Lawrence sort of saying to them, you've just got to get on with it, sort of thing. And do you think that's helped you also?
Oh, gosh, yes. Yeah, big time. I'm sure, because I've never known anything different. To the extent, some of you will have heard this, that when we left Africa, we drove all the way from Nairobi to Cape Town, 5,000 miles nearly, on dirt roads in an ordinary car. And, they were up for an adventure, but they took every precaution. Somehow they kept the insulin cool and the needles sharp. But, they were determined that it wasn't going to dictate to us what... As a family, what we did and what we didn't do, but they didn't. It makes them sound as though they could sound reckless, but they certainly weren't reckless.
No.
But I'm incredibly grateful for that start in life.
Yeah, and I suppose it's a bit like, I'm sure there's many parents out there that are like this, that they're smiling to you saying, "Oh no, that's fine, carry on," and it must have been tough inside, but you want the child to get on and
absolutely,
not be sort of scared about doing things.
I mean, it must have been quite terrifying, I think, when I went off to school for the first time, because you typically didn't take a urine test with you. I can't remember ever taking a urine test into school, and I think that was fairly normal back then. You just relied on symptoms and people observing.
Yeah, seeing how things have gone, and with over the years, obviously you started off with one injection. So you said, was that until you were about 7?
Yeah. Yep.
And what happened? What changed when you were 7?
Okay, I was put onto 2 injections a day, mixed insulins, soluble insulin and isofane insulin. And
Okay.
it was a great joy mixing the insulins in the same syringe. You draw up a little bit into one, and then draw up a little bit into the other, and you think, "Gosh, I hope none of the first one has escaped back into the second one." You know. The other favourite was you catch as you're going from one needle to one bottle to the next, one vial. You catch the needle on the metal top and blunt it. You know, it's horrible, but I survived it. um, but the 2 mixed insulins per day, one in the morning and one in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was that the fast acting insulin, the soluble insulin, that lasted. That was good for your breakfast and for your evening meal. And then the long acting insulin dealt with lunch and your snack before bed, before sleep.
Yeah.
And you had to have it at specific times. You couldn't just have lunch at any old time. If you had it quarter of an hour, 20 minutes late, you were usually hypo, and quite dramatically so. So it dictated life to you, really. I used to get really fed up because my dad would come and say, "Come on, you got to get up," and I'd say, "What time is this? Weekend, 8 o'clock. Come on, you got to get up," because he realised that the time you had the injection dictated what you did for the rest of the day, really.
Yeah.
But I used to get really hacked off with that. But
I was going to say, when I was on mixed insulins when I was first diagnosed, I wasn't as studious as you were on the time I injected. It was like, as long as it was before breakfast, that was fine.
Well, I certainly pushed the limits on that as well. I probably had a hypo or two as a result, or hyper. Yeah.
And I'd forgotten till not too long ago that they were cloudy.
Yeah.
Do you know, like it had just totally gone from my brain that the mixed ones used to tip them up and down. It had a little glass ball in it.
That's right. Yeah. To mix all the.
Yeah. You're doing that.
The soluble was clear. That was was clear. But those are all animal-based insulin. 80. I was using 80 units in insulin. And probably the worst time in my life, actually, and I know this applied to Liz Warren as well, was when I went on to 100 units. Quite amusingly, I've got a letter from King's. I've got all my old letters from King's, and there's a doctor wrote to my GP saying, "I do believe that Peter is one of the last people in the country to go onto human insulin." And but he said, in fairness, I was really embarrassed by that. But he said his management, his control seems very good, and he has no complications, which made up for it a bit. So I was one of the last.
Take it as a compliment.
Absolutely. But
oh no, I know somebody who's still on animal insulin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do actually. Yes. So yeah.
So,
but it was horrendous. I seemed to lose all awareness of hypos.
wow.
And I had a hypo at work. I had a hypo where it was the end of term. I had a hypo, fell over and hit a machine in the workshop I was working in, and I was found flat out on the floor, and spent a couple of days in hospital. But there's been some awful examples of that. On the other hand, other people. I know Paul Coker, who won't mind me saying this. He was allergic to animal insulins, and suddenly he lost that when he went onto the human insulin. So it was a good old mixture of experiences when the change happened.
Yeah. So when you did change over, was it that you needed a different amount, that they needed to titrate it to the correct amount, or was it just the new insulin worked differently?
Well,
in you.
I think it was a mixture of the two. I think my body has certainly got used to it, and I'm quite happy on it now. And my hypo awareness symptoms they're not brilliant, but they're better.
Yeah.
Better than they were then. But I also think I needed to cut down, probably because it was working better than the animal insulins. I don't know. But certainly I cut down on the dosage. But I'd just be completely unaware, and I'd just be wandering around, not knowing what was going on. It's horrible, absolutely horrible.
Yeah. Oh no, that doesn't sound good at all.
No.
And so, as we're on this path now, so you sort of went from mixed animal insulins to human insulin,
Yeah,
which was a tough changeover. And so, was that injections or pens when you moved over?
that was when I went on to pens, and that was one of the best changes in my whole of my type 1 life, going on to pens. Um, I, just this newfound flexibility in being able to, being able to actually inject insulin at a dining table without in a restaurant or whatever. It was just
Yeah.
fantastic. It just gained so much dignity that I didn't realize I didn't have before. If that makes sense.
Oh no, I know when I was diagnosed, I was given the choice.
Okay.
That was 90, beginning of 95, and I was given the choice of whether I wanted vials and disposable syringes or pens, but obviously I had to buy my own needles if I had the pens.
But yeah.
So I decided that I could afford to buy needles.
Yes, I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
But like you, I think it not demedicalizes it a bit.
Mm.
You're not drawing up into a syringe and
Absolutely.
doing that. It's just sort of something like that. So then you because I always think sometimes pens don't get the credit that they should get,
I totally agree. Yeah.
because I think they just make life so much better
Oh
than
yeah.
having to use syringes.
Yeah. The only thing that just pips it to the post in the best things that have happened to me is a CGM, and that's just been wonderful thing. But the pen was such a big change, as was the blood glucose meters, and getting rid of the horribly unhelpful urine tests. I mean, that was just horrendous.
It always sounds so. Right. How long was it? And this I have no idea about, with the urine tests. Were they always urine tests that you needed a flame to do them over?
No.
Or did they change so you just put an additive in and it changed colour?
Right at the very beginning, it was, and I don't know exactly what system it was, but that was over in Naked Flame. But that didn't last very long, and then we were popping tablets in, these very toxic tablets. You had to wash your hands very carefully if you touch them, into the mixture of urine and water, and the colour would change. It was a very exciting experiment the first couple of days, and you very easily burn your finger because it would boil the liquid and give you a colour reading. But as you can imagine, if I'd slept 8 hours during the night, my blood sugar could have been all over the place. And you just get a rut old mixture of it. So it's very unhelpful, particularly the first one in the morning. And the blue, the lowest level that you could read was anything apparently up to about 10 or 10.5 millimoles. But it could go right down to, well, nothing, I suppose.
Yeah.
So my parents always said, well, watch out, it's a danger area. You really don't know. Try and stay just in the green. But so there am I with blood sugars above 10.5. But I don't have any, that's the dangerous thing to say, isn't it? I don't have any complications, background retinopathy. I've been very lucky, very lucky.
But I suppose at the time, because you couldn't, like, there was no meters or CGM or anything, actually staying that bit higher, and the insulins you were on, sort of like less adaptable, it probably was safer to be that bit higher.
Absolutely, yeah.
Give you a bit of leeway.
Yeah.
There and there.
Yes, quite. I mean, my dad used to always encourage me to aim to be a little bit high before I drove a car when I got to 17. So maybe to just take a glucose tablet because you couldn't test your urine and get an accurate reading of what your blood sugar was at that time. Gives you probably the last hour and a half, 2 hours, who knows. So it's a very different world. But on the other hand, we lived in blissful ignorance and didn't worry too much about it. And I think in contrast today, we've got so much information. It's easy to get totally fixated on, 100% time in range and so on, which we didn't have that kind of pressure. And I'm certainly not one for. I don't. If I hit 100% time in range, I'm very pleased. But I don't work at it. As long as I'm 70 or 75% or more, I'm quite happy with that. So it's not giving me an additional stress,
And I think that's very true. I think the times when I just forget about it, or you can't forget totally, but do you know what I mean? Just don't obsess about it.
Yeah.
Are a lot better than I think sometimes we do have too much information.
Yes.
Having said that, I do like to micromanage that, but
Oh.
yeah. So which did you go on to first, Peter? Because I can't recall. Did you go on to CGM or a pump first?
I went on to CGM first.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I, I met up with the group for the first time that were climbing Kilimanjaro. We met in North Wales, and oh gosh, what an eye opener for me! I'd been muddling along by myself. Didn't really. I'm embarrassed to admit I didn't know what a CGM was when I met them. That's how out of touch I was.
Well, no, because people didn't tell you. I have to be honest. I didn't
Yeah.
know what one was
Yeah.
until virtually I went on a pump.
Yeah.
And I met up with people at Pumpers Drinks.
Yeah.
And they were there, and I was like, oh, what's that? If somebody doesn't tell you, how you?
That's true. That's true.
You know.
And I suppose, I mean, Kings have always been very, very good for me, but perhaps they don't want you to spend the money if they don't have to. I don't know. Don't know why it wasn't
Well, I
mentioned.
suppose at that point they didn't really provide them much, did
No.
they? Funded, if at all. So
No.
I suppose it was one of those they wouldn't want to mention it because it was so expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. But I contact Dexcom, and they lent me a G4 and and the little reader, which I loved. You clipped it to your belt and it just unfolded.
I've still got my G4
reader. So have I. Well, the guy who brought it to me, he said, he showed me how it all worked, and he said, well, just don't mention it at the end, and if they ask for it back, you'll have to give it back, but don't say too much. So it's a very, but I self-funded, in fairness, right the way through for the next 2 or 3 years, which wasn't easy going. But no, I was completely sold on it. So much so that when I got to I was about 500 feet from the summit, perhaps 1,000 meters, beg your pardon, from the summit, my blood sugar suddenly went rocketing up, and I was reading 28 millimoles on the CGM, and I did a blood test check, and it was much the same, and it was terrifying. I thought, my goodness, has my insulin frozen? It was so cold overnight. But I had the confidence to just give myself a very sizable correction dose, knowing that I could catch it. I got lots of space, lots of safety space to catch it if it started falling fast. I just wanted to know if the insulin had frozen and was not working. So I did give myself this dose, and on our descent, I noticed these double arrows pointing down, and I cheered. It just felt so good to know that insulin was doing something. So that that was I thought to myself, I've got to have one of these things. So I kept going on that. I've been on Dexcom ever since, apart from once when I was on a bit of research trial where I was using it alongside Freestyle Libre 1, which was quite interesting, comparing the two. But no, absolutely, they're wonderful. I can't imagine life without a CGM now.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting that you're saying that CGM is the game changer, which, don't get me wrong, it is. I went on a pump first, and then not long afterwards, I went on I started using a CGM self-funded.
Yeah.
And for me, I would choose the pump over the CGM if I had to choose one, just because from the doses I take, injecting is a blunt instrument.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I'd have a CGM telling me what I needed to do, but then I'd have pens, because I don't think I'd particularly want to use syringes, which I suppose actually might be better. But do you know what I mean? I couldn't give a small dose. But no. And now, as anybody who's listening to our little chat, you're using the Omnipod 5.
That's right, I am. Yep.
And are you enjoying that?
Well, put it this way, I was on the T-Slim before. I used that for 5 years. I used it for a year out of warranty, and it was a very reliable pump, and I liked it very much. But I found that when my blood sugar did go high, it tended to sit up there for a long time, and I swapped over to. I actually spoke to someone, I won't say who, about going on to an Omnipod because I've got Parkinson's now, and
Mm-hmm.
I was finding it quite getting dressed and after a shower and all the rest of it. I found it quite difficult on the left hand side because my dexterity is gone in my left hand. It's really not very
Mm-hmm.
good. And I thought, well, an Omnipod, if it works well for me, is good. Would be ideal.
Yeah.
But this person said, oh, the trouble is they're not that brilliant on this and they're not that brilliant on that. I had one way back, you know. So I thought, well, it's the only pump you can test drive,
Yeah.
which is a very appealing thing. I mean, I'd never buy a car without test driving it, and I find it very frustrating you can't do it with a pump.
Mm.
But there we go. But this one you can, and I went up to King's, and there were 5 of us being fitted up with the Omnipod, and I turned up, and I've completely forgotten leaving at about 7 in the morning to pick up my Fiasp. So the nurse there said, "Don't worry, we've got some Humalog, which I've never tried before." So I thought, right, let's do that for the first
Mm-hmm.
filling, and do you know it worked perfectly first time. We just took the settings off the T Slim, and it worked fantastically. Um, and it hasn't missed a beat. Oh, the pumps haven't missed a beat once. I've not had any problems with them since the 1st of May.
Brilliant.
And it's without I don't have to work at it to get 70 to 80% time in range.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems to happen. I'm not employed by them, by the way, but you know, I was just very pleasantly surprised. I was prepared to just give it a try, and if it didn't work for me and didn't like it,
Yeah.
then I'd go on to. I was thinking of the Ypsomed with the Cam APS, which obviously
Yeah.
would require is a tethered pump, which I was keen to get away from. But I'm absolutely sold. I really am. It's brilliant.
That's brilliant. I think that's the thing. It is annoying that I think particularly if it's not your first pump
Mm-hmm.
because you're not go. I pumps are much of a muchness. I know hybrid closed loops bringing in a new
Yeah.
aspect of that, but I sort of think your first pump you know no difference, so it's going to be better than what you had before.
Yes.
But I think once you're not a new user, so you're not going in blind and having to get everything dialed in because you're already relatively dialed in already. I think it's a real shame that we don't get to or can't get a trial
Yeah.
of different
Yeah.
pumps because like you're saying 4 years is a long time for something
That's wrong. Yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
or there is something better but you're sort of like, oh, I don't know if I want to jump.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh.
But
So it's really interesting that, so I'm going to move on because time is a
mm,
ticking and I'm interested in your activities. So I know recently you've returned from Morocco
mm-hmm.
from one of your many adventures, um, and this time you were trekking in Toubkal, which I had to look
Yeah.
up how to pronounce.
Okay. Oh, well done. I'm impressed.
So can you tell us what started you off on doing all these expeditions and things? Because I know you've done a few things.
Mm-hmm. Well, so the parents of a girl at school, um,
Mm-hmm.
they set up a charity to raise money for a diabetes centre at St Peter's Hospital in Chertsey,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just 50, and I thought, well, I've not. I'm lucky to be so fit. Well, let's get out and do something. So I walked from Winchester to Eastbourne in 6 days. I think I was averaging 16 and a half miles.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Um, and which I certainly couldn't do now. My goodness, um, and raised quite a decent sum for the charity and contributed to them. And then JDRF, as they were, got to hear about that, and they contacted me and said, would I be interested in climbing Kilimanjaro?" I said, "You bet I would. You know, I'd love to get back to close to my roots." And so off we went and met these supposed to be 20. We unfortunately lost one member who couldn't make it in the end.
I was going to
Um,
say, when you said we unfortunately lost somebody, I was
no,
like,
no,
oh my God, what
Had you
down
worried?
a crevasse?
Not quite. No. But so there were 19 of us that went up Kilimanjaro, and 17 of the 19 made it to the summit, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm pleased to say I was one of those, and it's totally changed my life. I realised how out of touch I was, and the response I got when we turned up at this little youth hostel in Wales, and we had to introduce ourselves and say how long we'd had type 1 diabetes and things.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I've had it 58 years. And this enormous cheer went up, and I thought, oh, gosh, and people were asking me all about it, and they wanted to know all the details. And they said, well, you ought to get out there and do some talking. And actually, what convinced me, Monica, who she reached the summit first, um, and she and I decided to go to a Discovery Day. I'd never been to a Discovery Day before.
Mm-hmm.
And Sue, I've forgotten her name, surname. She used to run the southeast of JDRF. She, in the interval, she said, "I'm just going to ask two people to stand up, Monica and Peter. Could you stand up?" And really embarrassed us about just having climbed Kilimanjaro. And this lovely man, he came up to me and he said, "We have a little. I think she was only 6 months old. This little girl, who who'd been diagnosed with type 1. And he said, our lives are absolute hell at the moment. We are struggling so badly. And he said, it's just been so fantastic to hear what you guys have done. It's just given us hope. And he said, will you please go out and sell your story, talk about it. So, between that and, the likes of JDRF as they were and
Mm-hmm.
Breakthrough as they are now, inviting me to do things, I do all I can to go out and spread a bit of hope and encouragement. And that's what I call all my presentations, because I think that's almost like a duty, I think, for me to get out there and spread some good word and encouragement to people,
Yeah.
particularly young families.
Oh yeah. Oh no. And I've heard you on more than one occasion, and
Oh,
it
you
is
poor thing.
really, really interesting. No, it's so interesting because you've got sort of like the history and all the different things you've used,
Mm-hmm.
and those sort of stories, but also these challenges. So you've done the walk.
Mm-hmm.
Kilimanjaro always sounds to me horrific, but it sounds like it was an amazing experience for those who did it.
Mm-hmm.
And did that sort of light a spark? Because I know you've done other things since.
Oh, very much so. Yes. I mean, if I was capable, I'm not capable of doing it now, definitely. But I'd love to have done Kilimanjaro a second time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a fabulous mountain. Um, but no, I thought to myself, well, for my 60th anniversary, I ought to do something. So arranged for it to do a part of the Salcante Trail in Peru, and to do Mount Vinacunca, which goes up to 5,200 meters, so not nearly as high as, well, Kilimanjaro is almost 6,000 meters.
Mm-hmm.
And Vinacunca is 5,200, so it's not a million miles off it.
I was just going
But
to say that still sounds pretty high
oh
to
yes,
me.
it is. It is. Gosh, and I felt it. My goodness. But we did that. I put out a plea to attract people with type 1 to come and do some trekking, and
Mm-hmm.
only one person came forth, and that was Louise Jones, who still a great friend from the West Country, and she came up, and we had a great time. There was a party of about, how many was it? I think it was 12 of us all together, and had a great time, and we raised quite a lot of money for both Diabetes UK and JDRF.
Mm-hmm.
So that was number two. I'd done several long distance, not fundraising, but long distance hikes, treks, whatever you like to call them, in Scotland. The Pembrokeshire coastal path, which was, my goodness, that's hard going with all the ups and downs and the steps.
Mm-hmm.
But I did about 100 miles of that, and so I've done lots in between. And then I thought, COVID came along. I was considering Kilimanjaro again. COVID came along, knocked that one on the head, rather, not the hat.
Yeah.
Well and truly. And so I was then diagnosed with Parkinson's, which is a great joy. And actually, it was just before Peru. I was diagnosed with celiac. And I thought, oh, goodness me, don't tell me that's going to throw a spanner in the works. And I said to the specialist who diagnosed me, I said, is it okay for me still to go ahead with this trek in Peru? And he said, yeah, that's fine, but
Yeah.
just don't fall over. Brittle bones. So anyway, um, I've kept going, and I decided to do. I wanted to do Cal, but actually a friend said to the chap that was organising, "I'm worried about Pete. He doesn't look quite as agile as he was before." And so I had a chat with her and with the guy who was leading it, and it was agreed that I wouldn't go that time. But I then found out I got Parkinson's, and I thought I'm on Rapinarole, a drug that I take every day, and it does something to help me, but my balance is not good. And anyway, we took off. Everyone in the trek, 13 of us, everyone was involved with type 1 diabetes in some way or other. Nine people had type 1 who were living with it, including 2 who had had it less than a year. And they were fantastic,
wow.
absolutely fantastic. Well, they all were. And my sister came along. She'll kill me for saying this. She hears it, but she was the oldest in the group.
Well, I've met your sister, and she looks very sprightly.
Yeah, she looks younger than me. I know, rub it in. But and then we had the daughters of someone I know in Reigate who is very active in the type 1 world. They both went up, and the brother of another person went up. So everyone had been close to type 1, so it felt really good. Originally, we had a medical team. I gave a talk in London at the Discovery Day, and oh, there's my pump kicking off. It's reminding me. It's reminding me that it needs changing. And after the talk, this nice guy came up to me. I'd spoken to him before, and he said, "I was fascinated by your talk." He said, I'm a qualified doctor. I've been qualified 9 years. If you want a doctor for your trek, I'm very happy to do it." And we had a DSN come along as well. But we had problems because when this chap, I won't name him, he looked into it. He said, my indemnity, I could do a lot of damage to that because my insurance only covers me to do work in a hospital with all the right equipment and people around. And he said, if I go and take this on and something awful happened. So one of the worst emails I've ever had to write was suddenly to say to these people, I promised you all this medical cover. Well, it's no longer. But everyone was really good about it. No one dropped out after that. So off we went. With the first day, we started at just under 2,000 meters, and we went up to over 3,000 meters. Had lunch at the top. There's a fantastic photograph which I shared with you of the group, which I don't know whether it's been shown yet. But we went up to that point, which was over 3,000 meters, and then we went down even lower than we'd been before to stay the night, which was pretty frustrating. But it's a damn good way of getting acclimatized, getting used to altitude.
I was just going to say, don't they do that with altitude?
They do.
Altitude, you go up and then you come down, and
yep, but they're not quite so dramatically usually.
Okay, but, I have no experience. They don't have that when I take the lift.
Oh, I'm surprised. Oh dear. But no, the other surprise we had, we'd been promised huts, and we suddenly found on the first night we were in tents. And 70 years old, as I nearly was, and with Parkinson's, tents are quite interesting, to get in and out. But we coped, and base camp was the same. But the paths were incredibly rough, and I found myself suddenly missing my footing, whatever. And I would tend to fall over much more than I would have done normally. And I had a lovely guide behind me called Abdullah, and he was literally keeping an eye on me. And every time I teetered one way or the other, he'd grab me by the handle on my rucksack and just hoik me up like a child. and it brought back memories of my mum doing that, when you're falling around as a young child. But I was very grateful to him. But I got to base camp, and I thought, this is not fair. Base camp, you start in the dark. You start at 3 a.m, and you go up very, very steeply on a scree slope, and it's really tricky. And I thought, if this chap is spending all his time with me, taking me up, I'm not only making a danger for myself, but I'm making it dangerous for other people as well. And that's not on. So I announced at breakfast at 3 o'clock in the morning that I was bottling out, which is hard. I didn't like to. I felt I felt as though I'd failed. But bless her, Amber, one of the I think it was Amber anyway, one of the girls who'd only had type 1 for less than a year. She said, Pete, you haven't failed. She said, just look at what you've created here. You've brought this group together, and you've got us doing these things, and we're likely to be friends for the rest of our lives, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that made me feel better about it. But there we go.
I was going to say you got a lot further than I did.
Well, got up to three times the height of Snowdon.
And the paths looked all. I saw some photographs that you took, and it was like you were just going over, sort of like rocks the whole way.
Yeah,
That
piles of boulders and places. Yeah, it wasn't all like that, but I have to say the some of the paths were far worse than anything I saw on Kilimanjaro actually. But yeah, it was really really tough going. But having seen the photographs, I'm really cheesed off that I didn't go up there and see for myself. It just looked stunning up at the top there. Absolutely wonderful.
But there's always next time.
Yeah, there is. Well, that's what people kept asking me. What are you going to do next? And I said, well, nothing with as much altitude for a start, and smoother paths preferably. But I have one or two ideas in the pipeline. I've got my 70th anniversary coming up in 2 years' time, if I'm spared, and I think that's worth celebrating, isn't it?
So, definitely. I was going to say we're going to celebrate it regardless.
Oh yeah, we must have a meet up or something. But,
we'll have a party.
Yeah, why not? I love a party.
We've had a lovely comment come through on YouTube.
Yeah.
From Nigel saying he climbed Kilimanjaro with you in 2014, and you're a superstar.
Oh, he's a lovely guy. He really is. Yeah. When we were having trouble with the medical cover for Supercar, I got in touch with him, and he was very reassuring. But he's doing very serious altitudes. He was talking about his next one. He's hoping to do 8,000 meters, which is just crazy. Carrying all your own gear and temperatures of -35 and crazy. But there we go.
Oh dear. So you have secret plans that you're mulling over then,
yes,
have you?
And no, you can't twist my arm.
No, I'm not going to do that. But I do have one question. When you do these expeditions, because obviously they are, you're not going to pop down to the chemist if you've forgotten something.
Yeah.
So what are the essentials you always make sure you take with you?
Right. Well, a lot of people took Diamox, which is supposed to help with altitude. I didn't on this occasion, but that's one thing you take. You take a decent medical, a first aid kit, decent one. A thermal blanket, lots of hypo treatment, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
I also take snacks because you never quite know what the food's going to be like. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant in Morocco.
And is that with you having celiac? Is that a problem when you are in other countries, or
it can be? Yes, I mean,
sort of.
You lose your altitude. You lose your appetite at altitude anyway. Most people do. And I have to say that in Peru, perhaps I shouldn't say this, but in Peru, I found that some of the food was just I didn't enjoy at all. Lots of it I did enjoy, in fairness. But Morocco, the food they hit the target every time. It's really good. That sounds like I'm criticising the people in Peru, but yes, it is a problem. But they were very careful. Whenever a meal was brought out, there was always a gluten-free version of it, or whatever. So I was catered for very well. Yeah.
Brilliant. And how do you keep your insulin warm? Because I know, like, my thoughts, and I know I've been skiing in the past, and so I've just always kept my insulin as close to me as I can.
Yeah. Good
so
idea.
I'm the heater. I'm the heater.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But if you're going up, do you have to keep all your insulin close to you? How do you manage that? Is it just making sure you've got something close to you so you can put all your insulin there?
Yeah.
Because skiing, I'm only the insulin I'm using whilst I'm out.
Indeed. No, we kept certainly on Kilimanjaro, which went down to nearly -15, I think.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
That was very close to the body, and I had 5 layers over the top. But in Toubkal, we could have had a bit of snow. Someone said it has snowed at that time of year, but it was actually very mild. We got up on the morning of 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was about 4 or 5 degrees, which is ideal temperature. But I mean, I use a Frio bag, but I also, if it's very cold or very hot, will wrap that up in, say, a jumper or something, just to try and keep it at that temperature, something that will insulate it. And it seems to have worked so far.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you seem to have done okay. And how, because you were saying about when you were doing Kilimanjaro, your blood sugars really spiked when you were at altitude. Have they done the same on when you did the trek in Peru? Was that the same? Because you were at quite a height there as well.
Not quite as high. It was just over 5,000 meters, I think. 5,500. It started to give trouble on Kilimanjaro. But when I got back to base camp on Kilimanjaro, I was not the only one. There were about 3 or 4 other people who had similar problems.
I've heard that before. You know, like when I've heard people talk about it, that they've had the same. I believe that at real altitude.
Yeah.
Blood sugars are a bit hairy.
Yeah. And I believe that it can actually, for people without diabetes, it can actually affect blood sugars there as well. It must be something to do with the lack of oxygen, I think. I ought to study up about that and try and find out what it's all about. But it sort of slips your mind when you've got so many other things going.
Yeah, it's over now. You're not doing it. Next time you think about it, you'll be just going up with 5,500. Oh, I should have looked that up, really, shouldn't I?
Oh, dear me. Yeah.
Oh, dear. So you've done, it was an amazing trek. I know you raise or are raising a lot of money from that trek, which is amazing. And we'll post out a link just in case anybody's interested.
Oh, yes,
please. In sponsoring, that would be amazing.
Well, I've raised nearly £5,300, and some people have been so incredibly generous. I won't embarrass any people now, but some people have been unbelievably generous. And the group as a whole have raised 11.5. That's with gift aid. So,
oh wow!
And I'm told there is more to come. So from one source, I won't say which, but there's more to come.
Yeah,
which is absolutely. I'm so thrilled. Absolutely fantastic.
Well done, you. That is amazing.
Well, it's not all me. It's lots of other people as well. But yeah, it's very rewarding to. Oh,
do me little sound effects.
Oh, it's made me feel better.
Oh no, that is. I mean, it's a wonderful thing you did, bringing together a group of people and being in it together, sort of thing. But also to raise, sort of that much money off the back of it as well.
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah.
And the last little section.
Okay.
We've got a few minutes, if that's okay.
Is this the difficult one?
Oh wow. Yeah, here's where I quiz you on ancient Rome.
Oh no.
I know you do lots of things helping and representing the community, the type 1 community, and you've done lots of advocacy and on various panels and represented and things like that. So I was just sort of wondering, how did you first get involved in that type of thing?
Gosh, I don't know. I suppose. Well,
did you fall into it?
Yeah, I suppose as Kilimanjaro had its effect. I was 60 when I did Kilimanjaro, and I retired at the same time. It was quite funny, actually. I went in to tell the head that I was retiring. I said, I've got 2 things to ask you, and to tell you. And she said, oh, that's very sad. We're going to miss you, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how much that's true, but there we go. And then I said, well, that's the easy bit. And I said, right, I've been asked to climb Kilimanjaro with this group. It's in June when the exams are finished and things are quite that bit more relaxed for the students. I've spoken to my colleagues and they're quite happy to support me all they can. Would you let me go? Oh, goodness me. She said, oh, dear me. No. But that means you won't be here to teach. I said, well, no, I know. But she said, well, I really wish you hadn't asked me this, but I'll speak to my management team and see what they say. And I'd already been around to all the management team, and they'd said, you've got to go, Pete. You've got to go. We'll back you up. So I think she got a bit of a surprise. But she she was a bit disgruntled. She said, "Well, I've got to agree this, and I'm not going to pay you while you're away." And I said, "Well, fair enough. Gosh, I'm not doing my work there." So, anyway, she one of the year groups said, "Would you do an assembly about type 1 diabetes and Kilimanjaro and what you're proposing to do?" I said, "Yes, I'll be very happy to." So I did that, and the head was there listening. And when she came off when I came off the stage, she said, "That was a really good assembly, Pete. I really enjoyed that. Thank you." And I think she put in 150 or 200 pounds that very morning into my fundraising, and became one of my biggest supporters. So it's lovely, lovely the way things change. But that's gone off track, hasn't it? Rather, but I think things kind of unfolded, and people said, "Well, would you be prepared to come and give your thoughts on, or would you be prepared to represent Diabetes UK or whatever?" And that's the way things have happened. And I think it's lovely. I mean, I've been looked after so well throughout my life. It's just lovely to give something back and do something positive as a thank you kind of thing. So that's I'm loving it. Doing it keeps me out of trouble. And,
oh, I don't know about that, Pete. But and so, what are the areas that you like to focus on, or are you sort of like have a broad area, or are there certain topics that you're particularly passionate about?
Oh goodness. I mean, the thing I'm most passionate about is one we've already mentioned, and that's just offering hope and encouragement to people and sending out a positive message. But I was on the research steering group in Diabetes UK, and I thought, well, I've been a teacher all my life. I've had it since I was, almost born. Perhaps I'll go on the research for children and I've forgotten all the proper titles now because I'm no longer a member, but I served on that for 7 years, which was very rewarding, very, very interesting to do as well. And yeah, it was a great experience, and it was quite sad when I stepped down. And Liz Warren stepped down at the same time. She was in a different group. But, yeah, it's just lovely to be involved in and help out with wherever I can.
Oh no, and I know you do a lot. You're sort of saying this, but I know you're involved in a lot of things. If other people wanted to be involved in this type of thing, the advocacy or DUK, or maybe putting themselves forward to be speakers at things, have you any tips of how to get involved? Or
I wouldn't be shy about it. I would get in touch with charities, say, get in touch with DUK and just say, look, I'm interested in helping out in some way or other. What have you got anything that's might be of interest to me to help out with? Go straight to them. Don't not all tomorrow morning first thing, please. But
although I'm sure they wouldn't complain.
No, that's true. That's true. The other lovely thing I think is, I mean, it sounds sad, but if I see someone wearing a Libra or a Dexcom, I get really excited and I go rushing up to them and say, "Excuse me, are you type 1?" And my youngest son said to me once, he said, "Dad, you're going to get arrested one of these days as the Red Hill type 1 stalker." But yeah, I can't resist it. I really can't.
There's nothing wrong with it, Pete.
I'm
not saying.
No.
I have done the same, and more in summer than in winter, because it's easier to just flash your CGM at them, because I always wear mine on my arm.
Yeah.
And I just think then, well, they either react or they don't react at that point. Yes. But normally they do react, and you end up having a really nice conversation.
Absolutely. Well, I started a little thing that I think lots of people could do. I got together with this friend Sue Wright in Reigate. And we set up a Surrey type 1 meetup group, and we go to a pub or we go to a picnic in the summer. We arrange these things and get people to come along, and we try to make it happen in different areas of Surrey so it can incorporate other people, so we try and make it always on a railway, close to a railway line, so people can get there easily. But that's a great thing. It's very rewarding. I'm going down to the Brighton type 1 meetup on Saturday. I'm actually speaking there on Saturday.
I can't make it this time.
Oh, you don't want to hear any more about me. Goodness me, you must be fed up.
I always want to hear about you, Pete.
Oh, dear. But I'm looking forward to that. It's just a lovely way to meet people who you've got so much in common with. And it's the easiest thing in the world to set up. You know, get together with a friend and just say, or stick something on social media.
Yes.
Within a 3 or 4 weeks, we had about 96 members from Surrey. It's incredible.
Fantastic.
Not that we've met them all, but
no. But I think that's the same, because I organised one locally to me, and it's been going, I think it's about 9 years now, 8 or 9 years.
Well done, fantastic.
But we've always sort of said, to start off with, there was like a little core of us, and we sort of worked on the principle that we always agreed that there'd be at least 2 of us there, so that even if nobody else turned up, we'd have a very nice evening. And we've never just been the 2 of us, never. But I think as long as there's somebody else and whatever, people will turn up. And I think it's such a, like you say, it's sort of like, it's fun for everybody.
You can talk to people who understand, and you can ask questions.
Yes,
they're fantastic. I love them.
Yeah. Oh no, and I know you attend other peer support groups.
Yeah.
Because even though I think I met you at a JDRF Discovery evening just before Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, could be.
You know when they used to have them? Sorry.
Oh, in the office. Yeah.
No, upstairs in the pub near. Is it Liverpool Street?
Yes.
One there.
Yeah. There's good pub as well.
Yes.
Right.
There's a theme.
Yeah.
But, oh no, that's fantastic. Claire, have there been any questions come in?
There hasn't been any questions, but we've had another lovely comment from Leah saying, Pete, you are a true inspiration.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
Wow. That's very kind. Thank you.
Well, no, thank you, Pete. It's been lovely talking to you. Thank you for giving up your time. So anybody who gets the opportunity to hear Pete, please do, because his story is one of optimism and hope and positivity, which I love. And your attitude towards living with type 1, I think, is one that a lot of us could do well to adopt. But no, thank you so much for coming on again.
Can I just say one thing from what you said there?
Yes.
People sometimes say to me, "You seem such a positive person. Why do you think that is?" And I say, "Well, it's my upbringing, but probably number one is that I should have been 6 foot under when I was 2 years old, and I'm bloody grateful to be here. Excuse my language, and determined to make the most of it, and not focus too much on the negatives. It's not all positive, but that's what I feel anyway. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, and I know what you mean. I sort of said that to somebody not so long ago. I said, really, I'm living on borrowed time.
Yes, yeah.
So you might as well make the best of it.
Absolutely.
But no, it's been fantastic as ever, Pete. Look forward to next time we bump into each other.
Indeed.
And take care.